Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me back. In this lesson, we will learn about the project panel. If I click on it, we will see the blue frame around it, which means the panel is now selected. If you also see another panel called Effects and Controls, we won't talk about it right now. If you see it the following way and want to return to the Projects panel, you can click here and get to the Project panel. We will talk about this panel later in the course. Right now, we are only learning the Project panel. As you can see, there is a small line that we already discussed in the previous lesson. You can drag it forward or backward like this. This is convenient if we want to see the full name of the asset in the Project panel. In the meantime, we can close the Effects controls. We can bring it back later. Now we will learn how to import assets we will work with within our project. When we work on the project, we will most of the time use the assets we downloaded from the internet or received from the client. But before we import the assets to After Effects, we need to organize the folders on the computer, so let's go back to the folder we created for this lesson. Here you can see the After Effects folder in which our file is saved. There is also the autosave folder here. I will go back to the Class 0 folder, and here I will open another folder, and call it Assets. There will be all the assets we will use in the project, as you can see now in the example. It is possible to be even more organized and open internal folders in case you download assets from different websites. You can create a folder and insert here the assets you received from the client, or assets you received from another person who works on the project with you, such as a sound man or a voiceover artist. In our case, we won't open any folders. Now, let's bring these assets into our folder. So let's imagine that the course folder you downloaded from me is like that we downloaded this from the internet. So open the course folder, go to Assets, and next to it, open the Assets folder you just created. Now we'll create a folder here called Envato. And copy the video of the leopard there. Now let's go back. Once again, I mentioned that we imagine as if we are downloading the assets from the internet. Open a new folder called YouTube. Let's copy the song and paste it here. For those unfamiliar with YouTube Audio Library, there are many free songs without copyright claims. It can be used for any purpose. You can search here by genre. You can search here by mood and many other things. You can find the link to the YouTube Audio Library in the course folder or in the description of this video. We can close this folder now. So now, what we have in the Assets folder is a video from Envato and a song from YouTube. And now, let's bring these assets into our project. There are several ways to import assets into a project. The first method is to click twice, here on the gray area. And here we have a window where we can search for our folder and import the video. Select it and click Import. And now the video is in our project. The second way is to drag directly from the computer to the project. This time, let's import the song. I drag it to the project panel. And here is the song inside the project. I'll expand it a bit, so we can see a little more detail. Now let's see what happens if we want to import files from Illustrator or Photoshop into our project. The way to import is the same. In our case, we will import an Illustrator file. Once again, when we work on the project, the main folder on our computer should be very organized. So let's see what folder we need to create. In that case, we will open another folder called AI. Adobe Illustrator. There will be all the Illustrator files. If I had Photoshop stuff, then I would open another folder here, and I would call it PSD or PS. In our case, we don't have Photoshop files, so I will delete this folder. Let's open the Illustrator folder and copy the Illustrator files from the folder you downloaded from me, as we did earlier. So once again, open the course folder you downloaded from me, go to the AI folder, and copy these two files into the folder you just created. Before we learn how to import Illustrator file, let's try to understand how these files are built inside Illustrator and learn how it affects our work in After Effects. Let's open this file and see what's inside. First thing, go to Windows, Workspace, and click Automation, so we will all see the same. Here is one white square, a black square, and a yellow square. There is also a text layer here, and as you can see, it is a separate layer from the colors. And now, I want us to enter the logo. You can close the course folder you downloaded from me, and open the logo from the folder you created. The logo was created in a video document. That's why you see all these strange measurements here on the side. We will learn more about these documents in the courses where we work with Illustrator. Now I don't want to overload with too much information. For now, just pay attention to how it is built. That is, all shapes and text are divided into separate layers. So we have two Illustrator files, which we will import into After Effects. Let's start with the logo. We can drag directly from the folder here, or double-click and find our folder, and import it this way. Now I want you not to do anything. Look at what I'm doing. Don't worry. I will do it once again so you can follow me. It is very important that you first see what I do. So, first of all, after selecting the file, I have to make sure this box is unchecked. It's less important to me at the moment. It could be on footage. I'll click Import and look at what happens. A small window asks me, "How do you want to import your Illustrator file? Do you want to bring it as footage?" Let's see what happens if I do that. It came as one layer, and all the layers were connected. I'll delete it for now. And now let's see how to import as separate layers. Once again, I will double-click, select the logo and click Import. But this time, I will choose Composition. This means that a separate composition will be created for me. There are two more options here that I can choose from. After Effects asks me, "Do you want to bring the layers as the size of the layer itself or as the size of the document?" Let's see what the differences are between these two things. Let's start with the document size. I remind you not to do with me, just look. I will click OK. And here, a folder with all the layers is automatically created, which is very good. In addition, another composition was created, which includes all the layers. Now I want to explain what we did when we clicked on document size. See what happens if I drag the logo into the project. In that case, the icon is indeed in a separate layer, as I wanted. Also, the text layers are imported separately. I will delete both. What is important to understand here is that when we choose document size, After Effects imports the size with the borders of the original document. And what is the original document? These are the limits of the document in which the logo was created, originally inside Illustrator. You can import assets from Illustrator this way, but most of the time, we don't import it as a document size, because we don't want all this empty space here. I will explain what I mean by that. For this, I will import the logo once again, but this time, I will choose Layer Size. So once again, a new folder is created with the same name but with the number 2 at the end. And the composition is also automatically called with the number 2 at the end. For now, I don't care about that. I just want to explain to you the difference between document size and layer size. So let's drag the new icon and see the difference. I will put them next to each other, and they will appear to be the same size. But pay attention to the border of the layers, unlike the border here. It is much more convenient for me to use the layer in that way, than to work with layers with an empty area because it will bother me if I want to move other things behind the icon. And here, it doesn't bother me. And if I want to do animation, let's say rotation. Look, it rotates asymmetrically. And here the icon rotates symmetrically. Great, so now we understand the differences between the two options. I will delete the two assets I imported. And now you can do it together with me. Double-click, select the logo, click Import, and choose Composition and Layer Size. There is the folder and the composition, which created automatically when we import files from other software. So, after we learn how to import an Illustrator file with all the layers together, let's learn how to import a specific layer from an Illustrator file. This time we will import the color palette. As you remember, I said the text is in a separate layer. Here on Illustrator, it's good for me, so I don't get confused between the layers. But inside the project in After Effects, I don't need this text layer. So let's see how to choose which layer to import, and which not. Double-click here and select the file I want. Choose this one, and click Import. This time we don't need to import all the layers and create a composition. This time we want only one specific layer. So, let's choose Footage. Then click on Choose Layer. And here we can see the names of all the layers that exist in this Illustrator file. This is another reason why it is always important to give names to your layers, no matter what software you are working with. Now I tell After Effects I don't want the text. I just want to import the layer called Colors. I'm talking about this layer. Then I will choose Layer Size. We already know what that means. I click OK, and After Effects brought me only the layer I wanted. I will delete this layer for now and move on to the next thing. Now I want to talk about this small area that is here. This area shows us the data of each file in the project. If it is a video asset, it shows me that this video is created on 25 frames per second, and its length is 7 seconds. Its size is 3840 by 2160, which is a 4K resolution. The audio files have other info. And for Illustrator and Photoshop files, we are shown the info accordingly. You can also see the info about our compositions. For example, the frame rate in this composition is 24 frames per second. Here we can see the duration and the size of this specific pre-comp. There is also info for folders. In this folder, for example, you can see how many layers it is made of. Now let's talk about this icon. With the help of this icon, we determine the arrangement of the files here. It arranges according to the colors of the files. For example, if I decide that all my videos are a certain color, I will select it with Ctrl, and as you can see, I can click here on the square and mark all my videos in red. That bumped it up. I will mark all Illustrator layers in yellow. So it arranges the assets according to the color tagging. Here we can arrange the assets according to the type of asset. In projects with many files, it can be really useful. Now, when we don't have many files in the project, it's hard for us to understand the importance of this thing. The arrangement is also possible according to the size of the asset. Here we can see more data, like where it is on our computer. You can right-click and choose what you want to see here. For example, if I don't want to see the size, then I can click here, and then the size disappears. If I don't want to see the media duration, I will right-click, and then I will cancel it. To bring it back, I can do the same thing again and choose it. Here we can see an icon called Project Flow Chat. It's similar to the mini flow chat we discussed earlier. It's just that it gives a perspective on the project, not through the composition but through the assets we have in the project panel. Honestly, I never got to use it, no matter how big the project was. Let's move on and see how to organize the project panel. As you can understand, when we have a lot of assets, it doesn't matter if we arrange it according to some arrangement one way or another, there will still be many files in here. And we don't want there to be a mess here. We want to keep an order very similar to the one we have in the folder on the computer, and a similar order should also be here in Project Panel. And it is very important to know how to do it. We can do it by creating folders. Exactly like the folder was automatically created when we imported the logo file. This time we will create such a folder ourselves. Using the folder icon here, we can click on it, or we can right-click here on the gray area and create a new folder. Let's create a folder using the icon. Make sure you don't select any assets when you do this. So I clicked on the icon, and a new folder was created. We will call this folder Assets. And inside it, we will put all the graphic assets in the project. For example, there is a folder with the layers of Illustrator. I'll put it in Assets. Here is the video. I will put it here as well. Very similar to how it is arranged on my computer. I will also put the song in Assets. And I will also put the color palette in Assets. Excellent. Now the project panel is organized. Let's keep organizing the project panel even more. So I'm making sure I haven't selected anything here because if I select something and create a new folder, the folder will be created inside the folder I selected. I'll delete it. And if I don't select it, the folder will be created outside. Okay, so another folder we need to create is a folder called Comps. Here we bring all the compositions except the master comp. It is better to leave it outside so we have quick access to it. We can paint it blue. Maintaining the project panel organized is important for a couple of reasons. Most of all, it will help us collect the project in case we need to send it to the client, together with the files we used in the specific project. Later in the course, we will understand it much better when we learn how to collect the project. Now, I want to talk about the search bar here. A search bar helps us to find assets very quickly, another good reason to name all your files. For example, if I want to find the colors, then instead of trying to find the colors from here, I can write colors, and it will find what I was looking for. It can be handy in large projects with many assets. Another important thing you should know about After Effects is that a preview panel of that specific asset comes out when we double-click on one of the assets. The same with the music. If I double-click on it, I get the same panel here. Of course, I won't see anything because it's an MP3 file, but I will hear if I press space. The same thing with this one. Another nice thing is knowing where to find the asset on the computer. Of course, we can see it here, but we can also access the folder directly from After Effects. Right-click and select Reveal in Explorer. And here is the folder where the assets exist on my computer. Now let's learn how to change names. I can press Enter and change to another name. I can also right-click and select Rename. Here, After Effects also tells us that we can press Enter. Soon we will talk about this one, but now let's talk about this icon. It brings us to Project Settings. It can also be reached from here. The next thing is the Color Depth option. If we click here, we will reach the same Project Settings panel, but a different column. This definition tells us how high the quality of our project will be in terms of colors. The more there are, the better the visibility of the final project will look, but it has a price. It will slow down the computer and the render times. Alright, so now let's move on to this icon. If I want to delete something, I will click on this icon, or I can click on the backspace key on the keyboard. This one. I'll press Ctrl-Z to bring it back. Or I can select it and delete it from here. Once again, I will press Ctrl-Z. Or Command-Z for Mac users. Now let's learn how After Effects works, and how to bring an asset to the composition. So, as you can see, all the assets are located in the project panel. But it doesn't appear on the preview. I can't edit anything now. I don't see anything here. To edit the assets and create the scene, we have to drag it to the composition timeline panel, which we will get to know shortly. So let's do it together. Let's drag the video into the composition called Master Comp. And now I can see that the layer is here. If you don't see the video after dragging it into the composition, I remind you to turn off the caps lock button on the keyboard. I want to talk about this icon, which is to create a new composition. It is exactly the same as we will create a new composition through Composition, New Composition. So if we want to create a new composition, I make sure I'm not selecting anything. I'll click here, and then I'll click on this icon, New Composition, and I'll call it Comp Test. Don't do that, just look at me. The settings are now less important to me. I'll click OK. What happened is that a new composition was created, and we can see it here. We entered this composition automatically. As you can see, it is empty because we did not drag any asset into it. And now, I want to go back to Master Comp. So after creating a new composition, it was created empty. Now let's see what happens if I drag any asset from the project panel into this icon. First, I'll delete this one. And now, let's see what happens if I drag the video file to the icon of the composition. A new composition will automatically be created, with the video inside it. The use of this action may not be clear now, why to do it. And that's fine, just know that such an option exists. Later in the course, we will understand this more. In the meantime, we are just checking which options exist in After Effects. Okay, so I'll delete it, and we'll move on. The last thing I want to talk about is the missing files thing. I will explain. I remind you not to do it together with me. So let's say that we finished working on the project. We press Ctrl+S to save it. And finally close the project. And now, let's say you close the project, and accidentally moved the video of the leopard to another folder, let's say, to the desktop. Now the video does not appear in the folder that was before. Let's see what happens inside After Effects when we open the project again. Look what happened. After Effects tells me, "Look, you have one missing file." This is the way After Effects present the missing files. Luckily for us, After Effects remembers this file's name. If I go to the Projects panel, I'll see this icon next to the missing video. That's how I know it's a missing file. If I have a lot of missing files and want to find them all, I can write in the search bar "missing," and then After Effects will find all the missing files in the project. Another good use of the search bar. We can learn from this case that it is not a good idea to transfer files from folder to folder in the middle of the project. You can move files from folder to folder when you know and remember which folder you moved to. For example, I know that I have transferred the video to the desktop. I can now find this missing asset in two ways. I can double-click on it, the folder of my computer comes out, and then I'll go to the desktop, see the video here, select it, and click Import. And it will return the video. The second way is to right-click, go to Replace Footage, and select File. Then again, my computer folders will pop up, and I have to look for the file, select it, and press Import. And that's how we deal with missing files. Alright, so now, with After Effects open, I'm going to move the video back into the folder it should be in, using Ctrl-X and Ctrl-V. Apparently, he won't let me do it because the file is open somewhere in After Effects. In this case, I can save the project, close it, and only then move the video back where it should be. I'll copy it again with Ctrl-X, and then I'll paste it here. And when I open the project again, After Effects will tell me that there is a missing file, once again. It happened because the last time, the program remembered using this video, when it was located on a desktop. We already know how to find the missing file now. Just double-click and find the folder where we moved the file. Great, so let's save the project again. And that's it. We learned everything we need to know about the project panel, and now let's move on to the next lesson, where we learn about the main view panel. But before that, I highly recommend taking a 10-minute break. Get up from your chair, do some light stretches, make some tea or coffee, and come back refreshed for the next part. See you in the next class.